Hello, our presentation is on paper evaluating machine accuracy on ImageNet. It will provide an overview on some basic components explored in the paper. First of all, the ImageNet dataset. This dataset is released in 2009, which contains of images belonging to more than 1,000 classes. It is considered to be the most influential dataset in the field of machine learning. Second, the ImageNet V2 dataset, a similar dataset as ImageNet while exhibiting a different distribution. Third, the human labelers. In this paper, 5 labelers denoted A, B, C, D, and E are trained to complete the classification task to compare performance with models. And finally, the trained model, which is convolutional neural network in this paper. Now, we will introduce the 3 main differences in performance between the CNN model and human labelers. Here, we will only provide a high-level idea, and more detailed discussion will be covered in later sections. Firstly, multi-label annotations. There are 20% of the images that belong to more than one class. Therefore, if we bind one image to exactly one label, human labelers would tend to give poor performance compared to models. On the other hand, if we accept 5 correct labels for each image, we observe improvements in performance from human labelers while models tend to perform the same. Secondly, human versus machine comparisons. The performance of human labelers tend to vary based on different classes of the image. For example, human labelers make more mistakes on fine-grained distinctions in animal, while they tend to perform really well with an accuracy of 99% for inanimated objects. Meanwhile, the CNN model performs uniformly on all possible classes. Thus, we can see that there is still much space for improvements on machines. Finally, robustness to distribution shift. We can tell from the table that when the validation dataset is switched to ImageNet v2, the accuracy of models drop in a range of percentage from 5% to 8%. On the other hand, the accuracy of human labelers remains stable. That is, neural networks are really sensitive to small distribution shifts, while this does not pose a problem for human labelers.
There are 4 main phases to the experiment, which are 1. Initially multi-label annotation, 2. Human labeler training, 3. Human labeler evaluation, and 4. Final annotation overview. The 5 authors of the paper are the participants to the experiment due to the experiment's complexity. A brief overview of the 4 phases is as follows. First, initial multi-label annotation. 3 labelers A, B, and C provided multi-label annotations for a subset from the ImageNet validation set and all images from the ImageNet v2 test sets. These experiences give labelers A, B, and C extensive experience with the ImageNet dataset. The second is human labeler training, in which all 5 labelers trained on labeling a subset of the remaining ImageNet images. The third phase is human labeler evaluation, in which class balance random samples are generated from both the ImageNet validation set and ImageNet 2. All 5 participants labeled these images over a period of 28 days. And lastly is a final annotation review, in which all labelers review the additional annotations generated in the human labeler evaluation phase, which is phase 3. This figure presents the detailed timeline for the whole experiment process. The initial annotation phase began in November 2018. After a 6-month break, human labeler training started in October 2019. The third phase, which is the human labeler evaluation phase, lasted for 28 days from December 2019 to January 2020. And lastly, the final annotation review lasted for 10 days.
The traditional top-1 accuracy metric presents a problematic classification evaluation where the number of objects increases within an image. With the metric punishing misclassification to all the labels, images with multiple objects or organisms suffer when an actual prominent object is recognized and not the label. This can be seen in both Figure 3a and Figure 3b. Within the figure 3a, there are laptops, keyboards, and chairs that all can be recognized by the model to be the prominent image. Yet, this prediction will be punished because the measured label is desk. And in case of 3b, the couple could be recognized by the network, yet the label is the picket fence. The traditional resolution to top 1's metrics overly stringent evaluation is the top 5 evaluation metric. The top 5 evaluation metric was used where if the label was one of the top 5 predicted models, it will be considered correctly labeled for the network. However, with the similar classes such as the different turtle species defined by the ImageNet database, this can be difficult to distinguish. The paper proposes to resolve the problem with multiple label accuracy metric, where an image fitting into the following 3 categories will have the labels augmented to accommodate the issue. First category, multiple object organisms. This is talked when we talked about top 1 accuracy metric problems, and this will be augmented to accommodate all of the objects. And the second one is the synonym and the subject relations. Similar to how turtles can be classified into a larger class, similar images will be considered as a subclass of a larger class, and the said larger class label will be added into each respective label set. Lastly, we'll have the unclear images. Some images are simply unclear to how even a human tester can accurately detect the label. Example will be the 3D picture showing a shore, and it is unclear whether it's a seashore or a lakeshore. Every unique prediction made by the models on the data set are reviewed and split into incorrect and correct labels to allow images to construct the metrics as described. As the figure 4 shows, the multi-label metric shows a clear correlation with the top 1 and top 5 evaluation metrics expected. Yet, it shows a clear and consistent trend of being measured higher than top 1 accuracy and lower than top 5 metrics respectively. The paper claims that this shows the multi-label metrics measures a semantically more meaningful notion of accuracy compared to its counterparts.
Several techniques and methods are used in the human accuracy measurement process to ensure the accuracy and fairness of results. Firstly, we eliminate bias from the participants. Since 3 participants participated in the initial round of annotation, they did not look at the data for 6 months, and 2 additional annotators are introduced in the final evaluation and annotation phase to ensure fairness of the experiment. Secondly, there are 3 main difficulties encountered during human labeler training, which are fine-grained distinctions, class inawareness, and insufficient training images, and thus 3 training regimens are provided to address the problems listed above, respectively. First, labelers will be assigned extra training tasks with immediate feedbacks on similar classes. Second, labelers will be provided access to search for specific classes during labeling. And finally, the training set will contain a reasonable amount of images for each class. Thirdly, a labeling guide is constructed to distill class analysis learned during training into discriminative traits that could be used as reference during the final labeling evaluation. And once everything is ready, 2 samples, each containing 1,000 images, are sampled from ImageNet and ImageNet v2 respectively. They're sampled in class-balanced manner and shuffled together. Over 28 days, all 5 participants labeled all images. They spent a median of 26 seconds per image, and after all the labeling is completed, an additional multi-label annotation session was conducted, in which human predictions for all images are manually reviewed. Comparing to the initial round of labeling, 37% of the labels changes due to participants' greater familiarity with the classes.
The aim of the paper is to compare human and machine accuracies on ImageNet database and perform a comparison of human and machine robustness to distribution shift using ImageNet and ImageNet version 2 databases. The figure 1 shows the difference between human testers are negligible as expected, given data testers D and E who did not participate in the initial annotation period performed better than the best automated models. When comparing the distribution shift, we notice the best of 4 human testers and the best of 4 models overlap when constructing the confidence interval to the accuracy with respect to ImageNet database. However, when McKinney-Mars paired test is performed, it shows a p-value of 0.037. It shows the confidence interval of human labelers and the confidence interval on trained network do not overlap for the image network version 2, and the McKinney-Mars test giving a p-value of 2 times 10 to the power of negative 4 also shows the hypothesis that human and machine share the same robustness to model distribution shift is clearly rejected.
Some other observations were also presented in this paper. The experiment also shed some light on images that are difficult to label. 10 images were misclassified by all the human labelers. In addition, 27 images were misclassified by all 72 machine learning models in this experiment. Only 2 images were labeled wrong by all human labelers and models, and both images contain dogs. Researchers also noted that difficult images for models are mostly images of objects, and for human labelers are exclusively images of animals. As previously discussed in this paper, machine learning models tend to outperform human labelers when classifying the 118 dog classes. To get more insights, researchers computed the accuracy again by excluding all the dog classes. Results showed a 0.6 and 1.1% increase for the best model on the 2 datasets. In comparison, the mean increase in accuracy for human labelers are 1.9% and 1.8% on the 2 datasets. So in conclusion, it's more difficult for human labelers to classify the images with dogs than it is for machine learning models. Similarly, researchers also computed machine and human labelers' accuracies on a subset of data with only objects as opposed to organisms. In the results, there's a 3.3 and 3.4% increase in mean accuracies for human labelers on the 2 datasets. In contrast, we saw a 0.5% decrease in accuracy for the best model on both datasets. This indicates that human labelers are much better at classifying objects than these models are. Lastly, unlike the CNN models, human labelers spend different amounts of time on different images, spanning from several seconds to 40 minutes. Researchers took a subset of images with median labeling time spent by human labelers of at most 60 seconds, which were referred to as fast images. Recalculating the accuracies on fast images showed significant improvements, especially for human labelers. This suggests that humans know when an image is difficult to label and will spend more time on it. It also shows that the models are more likely to correctly label images that humans can label relatively quickly. There are some other research areas with similar focus as these papers. The first one is human accuracy on ImageNet. In 2015, a research by Roskovsky et al. Studied 2 trained human labelers' accuracies on images. Although there are different findings, some results from this presented paper and Roskovsky's work are also consistent. An example is that both experiments showed that it takes human labelers around 1 minute to label an image. The time distribution also has a long tail due to the difficult images, as mentioned before. Another area is human performance in computer vision broadly. There are many examples of recent studies in this area, such as investigating human robustness to synthetic distribution change and studying what characteristics do humans use to recognize objects. Some multi-label annotations. The work done by Stock and Sisi also aligns with the researchers' study in this paper. According to them, the top line accuracy measure could underestimate multi-label by up to 13.2%. Another area is ImageNet inconsistencies and label error. Researchers have found and recorded some incorrectly labeled images during this study. Earlier studies have also shown similar issues, such as that at least 4% of the birds in ImageNet are misclassified. The last area is distribution shift. One focus of the studies is distributionally robust optimization. Another focus is on finding the model with the lowest error rates on adversarial examples. In conclusion, researchers noted that to achieve truly reliable machine learning, people need a deeper understanding of what input changes should models be robust to. The study also provided valuable insights into the desired robustness properties by comparing model performance to human performance. The results have shown that current performance benchmarks are not addressing the robustness to small and natural distribution shifts, which are easily handled by humans. And in terms of future work, other than improving the robustness of models, researchers should also consider investigating if less trained human labelers can achieve a similar level of robustness to distributional shifts. In addition, researchers can also study the robustness to temporal changes, which is another form of natural distribution shift.
We'll now go over some of the critiques to the paper. 1. Table 1 simply shows a difference in ImageNet multi-label accuracy, but does not give an explicit reason as to why such a difference is present. Although the paper suggested the distribution shift has caused the difference, it does not consider other factors to concretely explain why distribution shift was the cause. 2. The paper proposed to report performances on dogs, other animals, and inanimate objects separately as a recommendation to evaluate future machine learning models. This suggestion is overly specific and requires further generalization for it to be useful or convincing. 3. Humans were involved in the labeling process. However, not much information was given as to how they're chosen or why they're chosen. For example, this research project is about classification, as it involves many classes about specific organism species. A biology student would give a far more accurate results than a computer science student or a math student. It is hard to see why using a multi-label metric is necessary, given the current definition of the multi-label metric in the paper. The difference in using a multi-label metric and using a traditional top 5 metric can be made more explicit. And lastly, when discussing the main results, the paper discusses the hypothesis on distribution shift having no effects on human and machine model accuracies. The presentation can be made clearer, as its current version only gives meager reasoning to how they reach such conclusion.